This is an Action Potential Learning SAT mini lesson teaching you how to solve actual SAT questions to help prepare you for your upcoming test. I will be using the College Board Official SAT Study Guide, and this is coming from edition 2012, page 418, question number 17. In this problem, we're given a figure, a note that says the figure is not drawn to scale, and the following problem. It says that the flag is made of overlapping equilateral triangles, so ADF is one of the equilateral triangles, and BCE is another equilateral triangle. Since we know that equilateral triangles all have the same measure sides, so for example, if BC is 15, that means that CE must be 15 and EB must be 15. This is going to help us solve our problem a little bit later. It now says that ribbon is going to be sewn around the entire outer edge. So it's this bolded piece here. And because of that, we're trying to figure out the perimeter of this flag. Now here's the important information. CD, so segment CD, has a length of 10 inches. DE, segment DE, also has a length of 10 inches. And segment EF also has a length of 10 inches. What you can immediately see here is that if each segment has a length of 10 inches, each segment P should look about the same, right? They should be in similar length to each other, and that's not the case here. DE looks a little bit smaller than CD and EF. We know that can't be true though because each segment is actually 10 inches long. This is where this note comes in. Whenever you see a note that says the figure is not drawn to scale, you always want to immediately redraw your figure to make it a little bit more clear to you. Since I know that each of those segments CD, DE, and EF all have the same size of 10 inches, I wanted to redraw this triangle to where it was a little bit more clear that each piece is about the same, right? So this looks a little bit more clear than this one here. When I'm working through my problem, I'll be using this figure. Whenever we start our problem, we always make sure to write down what's given. And again, we know that each segment has a length of 10, and that's our given information in the problem. Also, whenever we have a problem, we want to write down what we're trying to find out. And let's remind ourselves that the question that we're trying to answer is, what is the perimeter shown in bold? Now that we've set up our problem properly, we can go ahead and solve. Since we know that BCE and ADF are equilateral triangles, that means that each side of the triangle must be the same. Well, the side of the triangle of BCE that we know starts at C and ends at E. That's one side of the triangle. So the entire length of this triangle is 20. C to D and D to E gives us the entire length of CE, this one side of the triangle. So that has an entire length of 20. Similarly, with triangle ADF, we have enough information to figure out the length from D to F. Since DE is 10 and EF is 10, then the length from D to F must be 20. What that means is one of the sides for triangle ADF is equal to 20, side DF. Since this is an equilateral triangle, we know that AF is also 20. Also, we know that AD is also 20. So I'll put 20 here. The only problem with that is, though, we don't care about this entire side. We care about just the bolded part here. So we'll have to come back to this information a little bit later. Similarly, with triangle BCE, we know that one of the sides is 20, that side from C to E. So the side from B to C must also be 20, again, because it's an equilateral triangle. Again, from B to E, that measure is also 20, but we just care about this bolded piece here. So how do we figure out this bold piece and this bold piece here? Well, it turns out that these dotted lines here make up an equilateral triangle itself. How do I know that it's an equilateral triangle? Since triangle ADF has an angle of 60 degrees, and since triangle BCE has an angle of 60 degrees here, we know that this last angle is also 60 degrees. Three angles in a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. 60 degrees plus 60 degrees is 120, and 180 minus 120 is 60 degrees. This means that this smaller triangle is also an equilateral triangle. It has the same measure of angles. If it has the same measure of angles, the sides also have the same measure. So all that's happened here is the overlap of these two equilateral triangles has created an equilateral triangle in the overlap, and that's always going to be true. Since I know that information, and since I also know that one of the sides of this triangle from D to E is 10, this side must also be 10, and this side must also be 10. Now remember, the entire side from A to D for the larger triangle was 20, because each of the other sides is 20. So that must mean that 20 minus 10 will give us the bolded piece here of 10. Similarly, for this triangle BCE, we knew that the entire side of this triangle from B to E was 20, because each of its other sides were 20. But the side of the smaller triangle is 10, so 20 minus 10 will give you 10. Now again, our question is asking us, what is the perimeter in bold? Now to get the perimeter of the flag, I'll add up each of the measures of the sides. I'm going to start at B and work my way around. B to C has a measure of 20. C to D has a measure of 10. D to E has a measure of 10. E to F has a measure of 10. F to A has a measure of 20. A to this point here has a measure of 10. And finally, this point here to B has a measure of 10. So we have 20 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 20 plus 10 plus 10. That gives us a total of 90. And that's your answer. Now this was a student-produced response question, which means that you would actually have to bubble in the answer instead of choosing an answer choice. These questions are a little tricky for some people because they get nervous when they don't see those answer choices. But remember, you have all the information to solve the problem. Another thing to remember for student-produced response questions is there's no penalty if you get it wrong. So no matter what in these types of questions, even if you don't think you know the answer, you should always at least guess. To recap, the important things that we need to know to solve this problem is what an equilateral triangle is, so same sides and same angles. And we also needed to know that when we see something about a figure not being drawn to scale, to always redraw the figure yourself to help you solve the problem. Finally, make sure you label what's given and make sure you write down what you're trying to find out to get the correct answer. This is an Action Potential Learning SAT mini lesson. Thanks so much for watching.